I can quickly say a few things to save the time. As you may know, we've been in this conversation for the last 26 years. And there's not been so much direct breakthrough until recently when we had Paris Agreement in 2015. So this particular COP, I see it in about 3 or 4 key ways. That one, in Paris, was supposed to, Paris promised a lot of things, and as you heard from the PS saying the commitments that we made, NDCs that we developed, this particular Glasgow COP is ideally supposed to make sure that we deliver on implementation of the climate action based on the different ambitious actions that we have posted to implement. But of course there are challenges that come with that based on our circumstances as LDCs, based on our circumstances as a developing nation. So in all this is where we see bringing all these issues within this COP to try and discuss how do we move forward from the commitments that were made in 2015, it's now 2020, to moving forward to ensuring that we walk the talk by implementing the climate action or the ambitious actions that we set forth in 2015. The second key important takeaway for my presentation is that this COP is bound around 4 or 5 important things in my view. The first one, keeping the 1.5 promise alive, and you may ask how do we do that? Keeping the 1.5 degree alive. How do we do that? By ensuring that there are ambitious mitigation actions that countries put forward. The second thing is the emphasis on adaptation. As we all know, we define ourselves as an adaptation-first country. So adaptation plays center stage in ensuring that we improve our individual livelihood and well-being. The third one I see is bound around loss and damage. How do we ensure that the impact pose that existential threat? The fourth who is responsible for what and who carries the burden by extension. So that's what it is in summary. But before I talk about those and the entire COP discussion, it's very useful to bring you to speed about what the different conventions that we've signed and ratified and how those play out in the discussions as we have them. Starting from the 1992, I'll be quite brief, and any first start question that anyone may have may be about what does this strive to achieve? The convention, just like any other conventions below that, strives to ensure stabilization of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere at a level that doesn't allow dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. So you may ask what that means to Uganda based on our emission profiles that we have. But the key point to reflect on there is Article 3 in that convention, which speaks to the principles, and the principle speaks to noting that parties should protect the climate system for the benefit of the present and future generations on the basis of equity, but also in relation to our common but differentiated responsibilities. But it also adds that accordingly, developed countries must take the lead. So we go into these discussions well aware there are those discrepancies that exist, and how can they be addressed collectively with the support, seemingly support that we may have to get to address these challenges. I'll not go into all of them, but maybe I can emphasize so much on the 2015 Paris Agreement. As I said, in 2015, the world signed a very ambitious agenda, the agenda to address climate change, but also the agenda to address the agenda to address sustainable development, and the agenda to address the runaway climate change. At the heart of the Paris Agreement is the mitigation target. How do we keep temperature rise to 2 degrees and keeping 1.5 on the table? The concept of balancing emissions and sources to net zero, and this is essentially why we were yesterday discussing the NDC, and by extension trying to discuss what the long-term strategy. The concept of keeping emissions and sources to net zero between now and mid-century and towards the end of the century. But also the idea that we have to submit carbon management plans every year. So the first submission we made was in 2015, so 2020 is the middle ground of when you are ideally supposed to present an enhanced NDC, or for those that have timelines between 2015 and 2025, a new one. So that actually should speak to why this Glasgow COP is very, very important. For 2 reasons: that it is taking place after that landmark agreement, because we had commitments that we made. Now we want to see how much of those have we implemented, and what are the challenges thereof that accrue out of this, and what could be done. But also it presents an incredible milestone for the different countries to come up together to review the various commitments, but also strengthen the so much needed ambition that we require to walk the talk. Because as we go to this COP, you'll be hearing quite often that we are short of time in addressing the climate crisis. Meaning, we need to raise ambition, we need to raise the kind of actions that we are undertaking if we are to contribute to keeping temperature rise to well below 2 degrees. On our part, we have set, I think, one of the most ambitious NDCs moving forward compared to the emission profiles that we have. So we are bound our commitments around nature-based solutions, which is what we see in terms of helping us reach the mitigation targets that we have enlisted to achieve. But the whole point we are trying to say in this entire conversation, while we put together that ambition in nature-based solutions, forestry, wetlands, increasing renewable energy generation between 2015 and 2030, is saying ambition on our part can only be achieved if we have finances in place. If technology is available to ensure that it can foster this transition from what we are right now to the future that we want. Issues around capacity building are very critical if we are to walk the talk based on the climate action plans that we put forward. So our key negotiators will try to elaborate in detail so much about what the nitty-gritty of the ambition in terms of finances, the ambition in terms of capacity building is, the ambition for us to achieve the ambition in terms of what adaptation aspects that we need to highlight. But very briefly, I can go into them in just 5 minutes. As I said, having had this discussion for the last 26 years, the last discussion having been in Madrid, so we have a bit of carryovers of the unfinished business. Unfinished business, as I said, bound around how do we increase ambition in mitigation? By increasing ambition,
the actions that we are trying to do to reduce emissions across all the key sectors. Climate finance is at the center of all our implementation activities. Adaptation, loss and damage. Article 6, which I talked about, the rule book, until I get to the transparency. In terms of mitigation, okay. In terms of mitigation, there has been a 2020 compilation and synthesis report, which is bound around how developed country parties have tried to address the emission reduction. But clearly, as you can see from here, based on the pre-2020 ambition that was set, we are seemingly a bit way off target. And that's why the outcome for this particular one, for this particular COP, under the mitigation discussions, should be ambitious mitigation targets. These are supposed to be reflected in the either new NDCs that we're submitting or the enhanced NDCs for us who have timelines between 2015 and 2030. But also reaching a decision to encourage all parties to initiate implementation of our NDCs, irrespective of the timelines as they are. So that's on the mitigation part. In terms of adaptation, which, as I said, is a core element, is so fundamental to the, not just to the Paris Agreement, but I think to even our own coexistence as individuals. We very much looking forward to raising the need for the operationalization of the global goal on adaptation under the Conference of Parties that have signed and ratified the Paris Agreement. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because if you look at our Vision 2040, in terms of advancing our development trajectory from where we are to middle income, we are talking about exploring sectors like agriculture, trade, oil and gas, tourism, and so on and so forth. Now, for us, in order to do that, it is critically important that adaptation is reflected so much in this global goal. Part of the reason is that compared to our emission profiles in mitigation, and considering that ours is taking a leap from a peasantry to a middle income status, then adaptation comes out very key. So while the discussion, as we all know, are skewed so much towards mitigation at the global level, and we are so much an adaptation country, we very much think that this is very critical and fundamental to us, reflecting these decisions into the CMA, to make sure that it provides that political space that is so much required, and by extension will drive momentum to attract support for adaptation activities. The PS was talking about the NAPs, but he also knows too well that accessing this money for NAPs, for example, however small or big as it is, it takes us colossal number of years. So how do we bring this into the fold to ensure that before we talk about any meaningful adaptation, because in adaptation you talk about immediate actions, medium and long term. In the process of trying to get money for the medium term, which is say 5 years, it makes no sense for you to access the money after 7 or 10 years. So maybe that turns about to be not just adaptation in the medium term, but adaptation in the long term, which is more transformational and requires even lots of more resources than what we are reflecting under the adaptation component for the short and medium term. Finance, I think, is very self-explanatory. When we're doing the national climate change policy, we also did a costed implementation plan. At that time, we estimated the cost of implementing the policy to be about $3.9 billion US. That's about $4 billion US. At that time, it translates to about 245 or 250, depending on the market rates available, $245 million every year. Now, again, those are colossal sums of money. That's why any discussions around finance is very critical, but not just in terms of accessing this finance, but also the issues around disbursement. So decisions around that are very, very key. Article 6, you repeatedly hear so much about Article 6. Article 6, this is the article that sets the rules for global carbon markets. Global carbon markets in terms of how much of the emission reductions have we accumulated, and who is supposed to trade in what, and where do those benefits accrue. For example, if me as US have projects in Uganda, how does that play out in terms of our NDC? Do the emission reductions that are accrued by implementing that particular project go to the US or are counted within our NDC as Uganda? Because we've also set commitments. The discussion is around now the corresponding adjustments of that. Where do they count? And that's a key discussion that we have to take spot on. So, but the rules and regulations bound around this carbon markets and non-market business is something that has been so thorny actually since Katowice. So it's not been finalized, and we hope as we go for this particular COP, it's one of the things that we are going to fight. Where do these emissions count, and what are the benefits that accrue out of their account, and how then do countries deal with these corresponding adjustments? Because there's a very likelihood that if that happens, then we are likely not to meet our target as a country in terms of the NDC provisions that we've set forth. I don't know how much time I have. I have a couple of other slides, but I'm happy to quickly run them through. Loss and damage. Maybe the question will be, why loss and damage? Very simple, two reasons. The first one is that the inevitability of further warming and associated impacts of loss and damage are an urgent issue. We repeatedly have incidents that happen. So how then do we ensure that these are addressed? Because that cannot be adaptation when such havoc has been wreaked. The second key important point, and this is from a study that we conducted as a Ministry of Water and Environment with support from IDRC and a local NGO called CHAI, where we used ICT moderated information to provide information to the various farmers to determine the rate of loss and damage of the crops and other livestock. But also aimed at ensuring that it improves farmers' conditions and the agro-economic practices that they do, and this was within the cattle corridor. But the study found out that despite providing all this information, 95% of the farmers experience severe loss and damage. So we see this as something that is pretty fundamental. And when you look at the decisions that have come through the COP in Madrid, it was just establishing the Warsaw International Mechanism of Loss and Damage, and by extension, what that is supposed to do. So for us, I think we are trying to look at how this is provided for in any various paragraphs that there may be, to ensure that this is reflected as a critical input or output of these negotiations. So, in conclusion, we seeing this COP as a vehicle that should deliver a comprehensive, balanced, and operational provisions of the agreement which we signed and ratified, to ensure effective implementation of the Conference of Parties, but also to continue consideration to ensure that the need to transition from where we are to where we want to go is clearly indicated. Within the Article 6, it was in my slide, but I didn't expound on it so well. The previous years, the proceeds that used to come, what I've called the SOPs, not the SOPs for COVID, the share of proceeds that used to come out of those interruptions that we had a couple of years ago actually used to contribute 2% to the adaptation fund. But as we have said, ours is adaptation as a priority, and I think that has played a significant part in supporting LDCs in accessing adaptation financing through the adaptation fund. So we think because of that demonstrated achievement that there has been, probably the increase of the share of proceeds from 2% of the global total to about 4 to 5% will actually increase resilience building in our society. Loss and damage, I've talked about that. I can't even emphasize more enough that it is something that we grapple with on a daily, and the circumstances that we are faced with actually put a spotlight on adaptation, but also by extension loss and damage. Finally, we have worked and continue to work in an effort to finally submit our NDC, having submitted a partial one, but we're saying, even with the ambition that we are putting forth, technology plays a key component. That as and when technology is absent, it will render us moving one step forward and two steps backwards. So you're saying here that provision of environmentally sound technology is a key requirement, in addition to other means of implementation that I enlisted at the start of my presentation, will help us walk the talk between now and 2030, as we set forth in our climate management plans. With that, I would like to thank you so much, PS and moderator, and back to you, Mr. Andrew Chamagel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. Round of applause again for Bob, because it was very detailed. At least we all know and we understand why this conversation and forum is very, very critical. To those who have just joined us on TV, welcome aboard. We are having a conversation, the route to COP26, and that is the hashtag on Twitter, on Facebook, and on the other platforms. And the other hashtag is climate action. So those from the private sector, like earlier on the chairman alluded to this, said private sector needs to come on board. So distinguished guests, development partners, government officials, the CSOs, MPs, online stakeholders, welcome to this conversation. But now allow me to, in just a few minutes, to welcome the critical people who are going to be leading this conversation. Let me request Miriam Talwisa, who is representing the CSOs, to come and sit in this inner circle. All my critical speakers, let's all sit in this inner circle. Miriam Talwisa, Dr. Kennedy, please as well, come in the inner circle there. I need to see you very close. I don't need to ask who is here and who is not here. Let me have Mr. Suri Mwizi from UNFCCC to kindly equally be here in the inner circle. Let me request Mrs. Saila Ngashi to come and sit up here, because UNDP is at the center stage of this. And I will again request Dr. Tom Okrud, the former ED of NEMA, to equally come and sit up here, because I understand Doctor is going to represent the minister because of some unavoidable circumstances. So these are our critical team leaders in today's conversation. Again, let me request From GIZ, we have Sven Engbers. We can have you here. Mr. Alex Crook from the British High Commission, he's already here. Seems I pretty much have my entire team here. FAO, Dr. Kennedy is already here. Yes, Sheila, please, you can pass this side. Dr. Tom O'Croot. Agenda. Let's welcome Miriam Teresa.
Yeah, thank you so much, the moderator. I'll follow protocol. So I'd like to address the resident representative of the UN, the representative of the British High Commission, present, the representative of the GIZ country representative, the UNFCCC RCC Kampala office representative, representative of FAO, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, good morning. I bring greetings, heartfelt greetings from the civil society working on climate change and environment in Uganda. I also carry along with me sincere appreciation for the opportunity for us to be able to participate in this very critical process, critical for climate action at national level, but also critical for having to amplify the voices and the aspirations of the people that are located on the front lines of the effects of climate change, as communities, as households, as individuals. These are the people that are at the last mile of the effects of climate change, but also at the last mile of the action. So in most cases, they are at the fore and the center of the effects and solutions for climate change. In that regard, I must say that this process and event is timely. Why? Because the science has spoken, political processes are taking place, and I must say that the recent IPCC report makes very specific and very powerful revelations. But to point out is the fact that the window for reaching 1.5 degrees is fast closing. And therefore continuing to do business or respond to climate change as business as usual is not something that we should further continue with. The COP26 is therefore timely, and there is unprecedented demand all over the world rising out of the great threat for climate change impacts and the need to rebuild within the two-pronged crisis of COVID and climate. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about climate change at a global scale. It's also very critical that at this point in time, we reflect on the challenges that have particularly been posed by the effects of the pandemic, the global pandemic. The promises that the parties signed 6 years ago and are yet due to be delivered across all elements, notably to ensure fairness, equitable and robust responses to climate change. Now the solutions must be accurately articulated at different levels, at country level, at subnational level, at global level, and of course the COP is expected to come through with very tangible solutions to address the effects of climate change. Particularly for this COP, we would like to forefront the issues of loss and damage. As a country, Uganda is one of the least developed countries. And in that case, we have experienced over time and are yet to experience even anticipated more frequently landslides in Bududa, just to give us an example. The floods in Kasese are very glaring incidences of such effects emanating to the changes in climate. So in that case, we would like to encourage and reiterate the need for action at all levels, for communities, for ecosystems, for structures, for frameworks. At the end of the day, we look forward to resilient structures, resilient communities, resilient systems that respond substantively to the effects of climate change. At the COP, we're looking forward to attainment. We look at the COP process as a process that should be able to help us deliver the Paris Agreement and indeed the United Nations Framework Convention morally and practically. From the civil society, there are tangible calls for action. We have been a part of the process for negotiations for a long time. A lot of talking has been done. We reiterate the need for action. We reiterate the need to put the so many ideas that have been put forward for a long time into tangible actions. And if anything, this COP26 should deliver for the most vulnerable across the range of issues. Later in the program, we shall be representing some of these issues. The time now, Mr. Chamagedo has only given me 5 minutes. I may not be able to exhaustively represent those issues. So later in the day, we shall be elaborating more on those issues and how practical they can be put on ground. In a special way, I would like to extend our sincere appreciation to the British High Commission for the support in the process for participating in the COP. We have had a stationed facilitator for the process. We have had support with visa application. And for that, and even more, the vaccination that was extended. We also appreciate the fact that the quarantine, which was getting in our way, has been dealt with, has partly been dealt with. And we look forward to more support in that area. We also extend our appreciation to UNDP for the financial support extended to our youth participants and a civil society participant. We also would like to reiterate the need for more support going forward. The COP being a process where issues, different communities, civil society actors civil society is extensive and not homogeneous. In that case, civil society has quite a number of people that are part of it and groups who, in one way or the other, should find their should be represented. The representation of the voices from the front lines, like I said earlier, is very critical. So indigenous communities would also like to be a part of this. The private sector also take center stage in this process, should take center stage in this process. So having frameworks and processes to enable women, youth, the elderly, given their experience and richness in the way they contribute to the effects of climate change, we are very hopeful that at the end of the day, having them on the table and being represented would ensure that the actions, the frameworks, the solutions that are put forward with such a critical process, in one way or the other, will be informed and therefore relevant, will be informed by the experiences of the people on the front line, and therefore will respond very substantively to their capacity needs and their potential. So I thank you so much and look forward to more interaction during the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. You'll bear with me. I badly want every Ugandan to understand this, but the researches and the data we have for TV, and anyone watching this, following this from home where you are or online, kindly find some time and log on to the Ministry of Water and Environment. This data is there. Go on UNDP website, it's there. The British High Commission and the website, all this information is there, but they'll keep sharing this information. That said, ladies and gentlemen, we're still having this conversation. The hashtag is COP26. I understand in here the network is not good for Twitter. So someone commenting about that on Twitter, the network is a bit slow, but we have to keep the conversation going. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Dr. Kennedy. Yesterday, he gave us a very remarkable the implementation and the key highlights from the FAO's perspective. Today, let's listen to Dr. Kennedy again about this forum as we're heading to COP26. Dr. Kennedy from FAO to give us a presentation. Round of applause for Doctor.
Thank you, moderator, for those kind words. The representative of the Permanent Secretary, UNDP representative, Madam Sheila Ngasha, the honorable members of parliament who are here, a representative from British High Commission, representative from GIZ, a representative from the UNFCCC, representatives from different government ministries and agencies present, representatives from civil society organizations, representatives from the academic, research institutions and private sector. And ladies and gentlemen, my name is Kennedy Ibokwe, as introduced. I'm the team leader for the climate change program with FAO Uganda. I'm making this remark on behalf of FAO country representative, Dr. Antonio Querido. He couldn't be here because of other competing demands of his time, but he's here with you in spirit, and extend his very warm greetings to all of you present, and in particular to negotiators who will be representing the country and government of Uganda. First, I would like to again thank the entire government of Uganda for the opportunity to support, for giving FAO the opportunity to support the pre-COP26 processes through convening the thematic group meetings in areas of adaptation, vulnerability, mitigation, technology, transfer and development, gender, finance, and capacity building, which has enabled the drafting of the national position paper for the COP26. And also, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the European Union through the Global Climate Alliance that has funded FAO work and also supporting these pre-COP processes. This was as part of the negotiations during the project formulation of the GCCA project with the Ministry of Water and Environment. A small fund was made available to support some of these type of discussions on climate change. And also would like to thank government of Sweden for funding part of these processes. We are very glad to note the focus of the country position paper without preempting the presentation that will come afterwards. I think the discussions from the different thematic groups and what you will read in the national paper, in the national position paper, and also discussion will follow, you'll find out that it will be based more on concrete actions. Because as Bob mentioned, I think the discussion on climate change has been going on for quite a long time. So there's no more time for too much talk. It should be time for action. And I think some of the expectations, which I think also is consistent with your expectations, is that the focus of the position paper will be about scaling up climate finance to address climate actions in the country. Yesterday, I gave a small statistics that the adoption rate for climate smart agriculture in Uganda is just 30%. But in some areas, it's far below that. So a lot of action is needed in area of finance and also scaling of finance. Then the other area that hopefully will be discussed is on the COVID-19 initiatives, as all of us have felt the impact, and how those initiatives are aligned with climate actions, especially as well as actions to address the urgent need of technology development and technology transfer, and of course, gender considerations. So in addition to the above that I just mentioned, I would like to take this opportunity to stress some areas that FAO would like to emphasize a little bit more in support of member countries, which of course includes Uganda, through technical assistance and resource mobilization. One is on promoting climate resilient agri-food systems as part of the solution to climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and ecosystem degradation. As all of you know, greenhouse emissions from agri-food sectors represent 34% of the total greenhouse gas emissions, caused mainly by deforestation, livestock production, unsustainable soil and nutrient management, and food loss and food waste. About 24% of the contribution comes from farming, agriculture, forestry, and land use. So this refers to the actual process of producing food, forestry products, and human transformation of the natural landscape. About 5 to 10% of the contribution to the greenhouse gases, or to this particular figure of 34% from agri-food systems, come at the later stage or later stages in the food system, like processing, consumption, and disposal of food waste. So by what we know, almost half of the solutions to stay within agri-climate goals comes from agri-food systems. but agri-food systems need to be transformed through inclusive, multi-sectoral approaches and innovation and innovative solutions that reduce emissions, draw down at carbon, and boost climate resilience and adaptation. And this brings me to my next point, which the thematic groups are also working on technology development and technology transfer. So we cannot transform the agri-food system without this aspect, without technology development and technology transfer. I'd like to give just one example. FAO is promoting small-scale irrigation development in partnership with Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Water and Environment, Ministry of Local Government, and also Ministry of Gender and Social Development. Now, what we realize is that for farmers to have an irrigation system that can help boost production requires a lot of investment. So the cost of technology for irrigation is high. I don't want to give figures as we are still trying to determine the exact figure so that we can give you this at a later stage. But it's an area of technology need. It's an area of technology need. So technology development and transfer is crucial for promotion of resilient agri-food system. Technology development in all aspects and phases of the food system should be encouraged and supported. Now we have a number of young people graduating from universities in Uganda. They can also be involved in technology development. They can also be involved in technology transfer. So when you negotiate for more resources on technology development, you also look into this aspect. Transforming agri-food systems so that they produce more food with greater socio-economic benefits, less impact on the environment and natural resources can only succeed through adoption of innovative technology and the use of indigenous technical knowledge. My sister from the civil society mentioned about indigenous knowledge. This is very important. Ensuring access to sustainable and reliable, affordable energy beyond farm gate reduces food loss, leading to costs in emissions and gains in agricultural productivity. But I'd also like to mention that technology development, and especially technology transfer, is not only about bringing technologies from outside Uganda. It is also about transferring technologies within Uganda. The other important area of consideration from FAO is on the gender. I'm very happy that this is one area of focus of the thematic group. As we know, equal access for rural women and youth to produce resources, to productive resources, either financial or advisory services, climate smart and labor saving technologies and practices, and investment in the empowerment and leadership is key to transforming the agri-food system. We also know that women ownership of productive resources is positively linked to their uptake of climate resilient technologies, soil and water conservation techniques. For instance, where women have secure land rights, greater yields and increased food security are also observed. I think in some regions in Uganda, like in northern Uganda, Western in particular, the initiatives on customary land titles is going on. There are good examples that can be used in other parts of the country. So this is also one area that the gender group negotiators can also look at. How do women have more access to land titles? Then the last point I want to emphasize is on the systems approach. With the current population estimated at 47 million, the bigger question for Uganda is whether agriculture can meet the unprecedented demand for food for the populations in ways that can ensure that the use of natural resource base is sustainable while containing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating the impacts of climate change. Now, responding to this question adequately requires a system-based approach to produce more food with greater socio-economic benefits and less impact on the environment. This can be achieved through green and climate resilient approaches, including technological innovations. So technology comes out repeatedly because it's very, very important. Digital solutions, indigenous and traditional knowledge. So the government can also strengthen policies and enabling environment for nature-based solutions, which is the buzzword we are now using, also called the natural climate solutions. Uganda is not starting from zero when it comes to system approach. In fact, the nature-based solution can build upon existing strategies, like the integrated water resource management strategy that have been developed by the Ministry of Water and Environment, which divided the country into water management zones and catchments. This is system. So you can build the nature-based solution upon this. And this can also be one point of argument for your negotiations. And also the climate smart agriculture strategy developed by the Ministry of Agriculture and Animals Industries and Fisheries. So let me conclude by saying that FAO is strategically placed to catalyze the urgent transformation needed for agri-food systems to be part of the solution to the climate crisis. And FAO stands ready to support Uganda in implementing more efficient, more effective, innovative agri-food systems, as well as in government efforts to assess climate finance, including through Green Climate Fund, the Global Environment Facility Adaptation Fund, and through other bilateral donors. Finally, I would like on behalf of FAO to wish the government negotiators the best of success as you go to Glasgow to represent the government. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kennedy. With the interest of time, I want to re-echo that we all have 7 minutes to make these statements about the issues that are very pertinent so that each one of us can have equal share. Let me request from the British High Commission, Alex Crook, to come and sit up here with the chairman as well as Sheila. Alex, please take up the seat up there. Joining us on Zoom, we have the GIZ, that is Sivan Egbers. Egbers, if you can hear me, good morning. Sivan, good morning. Okay, I think we'll have Sivan a little later. We have technological issues. Like Dr. Kennedy says that we are having a technological issue as a country, as a continent, globally. We need to have adaptive measures on, affordable technologies where we can have these conversations so seamlessly and so. Ladies and gentlemen, that said, let me welcome from UNFCCC Kampala, that is Suri Muizi, to address us. Round of applause for Suri.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Suri Muse. I'm the regional lead at the RCC Kampala. That's the Regional Collaboration Centre, and we're a collaboration between the UNFCCC Secretariat and the East Africa Development Bank. So it's really nice to be here with everyone this morning. All protocols observed, representatives of the government, representatives of the UN, and representatives of the development partners. So I just want to talk a little bit about COP26. As you may know, as the UNFCCC, these climate change conferences are kind of our bread and butter. So I just want to go over a couple of points of what might be expected in Glasgow at the end of the month. Just want to underline how much of an important COP this is. after, you know, we've been interrupted now for 1 year through COVID. So the negotiations have been stalled for some time, and work has only been progressed in informal ways and in informal forums. So this is a good opportunity to restart the discussions and the negotiations again. And not only that, we have the UK presidency presiding this year, who are really focused on ambition, and probably you've heard Alex Crook go on about that several times in different forums. Maybe he's going to, we'll hear more about that today, I'm sure. And I just want to point at some of the main key issues that the UK presidency is pursuing that also are particularly relevant to Uganda. So it's about net zero by mid-century. Then there's the finance, which is a key area that the presidency is pursuing, and also the adaptation and resilience. So I'm looking forward to discussions later on today of the country position paper and how it relates to these areas that the presidency is pursuing. And then we also have the taking stock at this COP of all of the new and updated NDCs. So the NDCs are the nationally determined contributions, and they're one of the key building blocks of the Paris Agreement. This is a requirement for all countries to put forward their nationally determined contribution, which is like a medium-term plan outlining their ambition on mitigation, and also can contain elements on adaptation in there as well. And many of you have probably been very involved in the development of Uganda's NDC recently. So back in Paris in 2015, in the cover decision to the Paris Agreement, the parties were invited to update and submit by 2020 new and updated NDCs. So why this is important is that in this COP we'll have a look at all of these NDCs that have come in and synthesize and aggregate and see how we're doing in terms of the ambition and if we're on track for net zero by mid-century. And the information and data to date is showing that this is there's still a gap in this ambition, so there's still some work to be done by everyone. And I just want to commend as well Uganda for submitting its interim updated NDC, and just join as well my Executive Secretary in commending Uganda on the work that it's been doing in that regard. So that means as well that the synthesis report that the Secretariat has been putting together, which was also a mandate from 2015, the Ugandan interim NDC will be included in there. I just want to also mention that Uganda is unique in that it has been developing its NDC together with its long-term low-emission development strategy. And this is very important because not only has the NDC been now been put forward to 2030, but this has been anchored as well in a longer-term plan that has been widely consulted over the last year or so. I'd really like to keep it short because I'm looking forward to discussing the position paper, and I'm looking forward then as well to see the Ugandan delegates in Glasgow, and wish you all best of luck and success over there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suri. That was brief but on point. I want to go back to Nairobi, and I confirm that if we are having a Sven Egbers. Good morning, Egbers, if you can hear me. Good morning, Egbers. I think we have dropped him again, and we'll be finding him.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Can I have the feed of Egbers, please?
Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can hear you, but I can't see you. Can I have a look at you, please? Okay, perfect. There you are. So carry on.
Perfect. I can see you loud and clear. I can also hear you. Apologies about the technical hiccups, but it looks like now everything is fine, right?
Everything is fine. Carry on.
Perfect. All right. Good morning. And good morning to my colleagues from the Ugandan government representing the Ministry of Water and Environment and other line ministry. Also good morning to members of Parliament, other development partners present, colleagues from FAO, UNDP, the British High Commission, RCC Kampala, and good morning to colleagues from the private sector and civil society organizations in Uganda. My name is Sven Eckers. I'm working for GIZ Uganda, that is the German Development Corporation, on a project that focuses on climate change and that is currently supporting the Ugandan government in a variety of topics, including the update of the NDC and the climate change long-term strategy. First of all, I want to thank the Ministry of Water and Environment and the Climate Change Department in particular for the organization of this important forum. I want to commend the leadership of the UNFCCC focal points for Uganda, Mr. Alfred Okot Okidi, the Permanent Secretary, and Mr. Bob Natif, the Assistant Commissioner, for the very good coordination and head of COP26. With COP26, literally only a few days away, we see this climate change forum as a good opportunity to shape the country's negotiation position and inspire effective participation in the negotiations. And I can only repeat and emphasize again what Bob and also colleagues from FAO and the RFCC Kampala already mentioned, is that COP26 is really a special one. It's really a very important one. It's the first time in 2 years that we are meeting again physically for a climate change conference. And it's very important to resolve some of the remaining crunch issues, including, as mentioned, for example, in the very good presentation from Bob, ambition raising, the provision of finance and support to developing countries, the rules for market and non-market mechanisms, and the technicalities needed for countries to transparently report on their climate actions. So, we're really looking forward to this COP, and I think a successful outcome will entail a balanced approach, shared understanding, and of course also to some level a compromise for parties to come to an agreed position this year in Glasgow. And it's my firm belief and hope that this forum today will be engaging specifically on these outstanding issues, thereby enhancing Uganda's preparedness for the COP26 participation. I'd like to keep my remarks short and wish you all a very productive discussion and conversations today. So thanks a lot for inviting us and hosting this event. And I'd like to hand it back to the moderator. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Egbers. Round of applause for him. That is the country director from GIZ, our very close partners in this. And once again, those ones following this conversation online, I've seen a comment there. The network is not good, but I've seen a comment that came in from one of those watching in Butambala. Your concern was, how does this cascade downwards to us as Ugandans? And that's why we have the negotiators here who are going to negotiate, but your role is to amplify the climate change conversation from the village level to the sub-county level to parish level, so that we can achieve. Key of this conference, what you should know is that the COP26 presents a moment of opportunity for Uganda to keep a momentum on the implementation of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, as Bob alluded to earlier. Now, this will allow the parties to harness this collective enthusiasm to thrive for ambitious goals set out in the nationally determined contributions which we discussed yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, from the British Commission, allow me to welcome Alex Crook to address us. These are our greatest organizers for today. Round of applause for the British High Commission.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me. It's really good to see so many friends here, new and old, including some I just met yesterday, so really good to see people again. All protocol observed. I'm absolutely terrible at that, and apologies that my name does not begin with an S, because then we would have 3 Mzungus in a row. Suri, Sven, and we can call me Stephen for today if you like, that's fine. You can tell it's going to be slightly less technical than the other discussions, can't you? So, my name is Alex Crook, not Stephen. I'm from the British High Commission here in Kampala, and I am the East Africa Climate Change Lead, so I cover the whole region. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the UK's approach to hosting COP26 and the importance of what we're trying to achieve. So, if I just start off by saying the UK is really proud to host COP26 in partnership with Italy. This is the biggest conference that the UK has ever hosted, and I think it might be fair to say that it could be the biggest conference that the world has ever had in terms of the future of our planet. So not just a little bit of expectation on our backs there. So as many other speakers have said, we really recognise the importance of COP26. 5 years since the Paris Agreement, the first real test of that agreement, obviously with the one year delay because of COVID. And we also have recognised that in the past at COPs, the focus has not been enough on adaptation and on the experience of the most vulnerable. And that's why for this COP, adaptation is one of 4 key themes that we are focusing on. And we are making sure that that is an equal partner and an equal objective in what we're trying to achieve at COP26. So what are the other 3, you might ask? And Bob and Suri have both mentioned them. So obviously we've got mitigation and the fight to keep 1.5 degrees alive. And as Suri said, really welcome the Ugandan interim NDC and the commitment to have the full NDC, hopefully, where we're really hopeful to see that increase in ambition. And Uganda playing its role on a global stage in terms of building that momentum for mitigation action. Then we've got finance, and again, we recognise how important this is, especially for countries like Uganda, who need to be able to access that finance. First of all, they need the finance to exist, and then to be able to access that finance to deliver on all these plans. So, we always talk about implementation in Uganda. There's no point in having these plans if we can't implement them. And I was at a youth discussion yesterday where that point was made really, really clearly. And the UK presidency is committed and is focused on making sure that access to the climate finance gets easier, and look out for an announcement at COP on Uganda on that as well. I get to tease all these things, but I'm afraid I don't get to tell you about them. And then the 4th one of our focuses for COP is on collaboration. And collaboration has kind of 3 different parts of it. So first of all, it's the areas where we feel we can make the biggest impact as quickly as possible. So that's phasing out coal, that's money, that's the transition to zero-emission vehicles, but it's also what our Prime Minister is calling trees, which basically means reforestation. And I know that's really close to the ambitions of the government of Uganda in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation, and I would urge the government of Uganda to commit to the Glasgow Declaration on Forests and Land Use, which they can do ahead of COP26 or at COP26. Either is fine, but really encourage you to go for that and join that global momentum for the reforestation that we need to see. So that's the first bit of collaboration. The second bit of collaboration is about the whole of society approach. So we all know that those of us here in the room, however hard we try, we can't tackle climate change alone. We need business, we need civil society, Miriam said it, we need youth, we need faith groups, we need indigenous people, we need all of these people to play their part. We need individuals at home, everyone to play their part in tackling climate change. So it's a whole of society approach that we are promoting. And then finally, in terms of collaboration, we're talking about negotiations. And that's why we're here today, which is great. But we need all countries to come together, to work together on the negotiations, across countries, across communities, across observers, across national delegations, but we need countries to come with a positive mindset ready to make progress, and ready, as one of the other speakers said, to compromise. No one is going to arrive at COP and get exactly what they want. So we need all countries to be ready to know what they can compromise on and what they feel they can't, and be clear about that in the negotiations so we can make as much progress as we can and find solutions that work for the whole world, because otherwise we won't get anywhere. The UK's role in the negotiations is as an honest broker. So fortunately I'm here, I'm not going to, all I'm here to is hear what your priorities are, and then I can take them away and it can help inform our approach as the UK COP presidency to finding those solutions. And we recognise, as Bob set out at the start, that there are so many issues at the moment of importance to Uganda, with Article 6, with transparency, common timeframes, loss and damage, etc. We're aware of them. They're all big issues for us too, and we are focusing on finding solutions in those spaces. Just a quick note about holding COP26 in person. Now, obviously, we are in a time of a global pandemic, which is easing in some places and not in others, and it's very difficult to do in-person meetings, so it's very nice to be here with you all today. Our experience as COP26 President-designate over the last 2 years has been that we cannot make progress on the negotiations virtually. We've seen, due to time differences, we're seeing it with Sven today, due to connection issues, that we haven't been able to have those conversations that we need to have. And that is why the UK has committed to having COP in person, and that is why it will happen starting at the end of next week in person, and we are committed to making it as safe as possible. And that is for the people who are attending, but also for the people of Glasgow locally. So very grateful to those of you who are attending for your commitment to those procedures, etc., that we're going to have at Glasgow to make sure that we keep everyone as safe as possible and we can keep COP running and get the solutions that we need. What other points have I got to make? I think that might be it, but I think just to finally say that, just to reiterate that we need to make progress at this COP. It's delayed by an extra year, which puts even more urgency on it, but we have seen the whole world is now watching the COP process, and whereas in COP25 in Madrid, it might have made the news for 1 or 2 days, I think it's fair to say this is going to be in the news every day for the next 3 weeks, certainly, in the majority of countries worldwide. So we need to make that progress, and those of us who are going to COP need to be able to show that we are committed to making progress for the planet. I've said progress a lot of times. So finally, just to say thank you for having me, and I really look forward to hearing from the negotiators about their approaches, their priorities, and their issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That is a very, very remarkable conversation you have had. Thank you so much. I'm back. It was something technical, but I am back. The conversation keeps on going again and again. It gets much more exciting. Allow me now to welcome one of the key partners and someone who's been drumming these, I think, remarkably for I don't know how long the conversations have been going on, and that is UNDP. First of all, let's give a round of applause to UNDP and the British High Commission. They have kept these conversations going in the media domain, on and offline. And that said, allow me to welcome the Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP, Madam Sheila Ngashi.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning again. Thank you. That is much better. It is a delight for me to be here on behalf of the United Nations Development Programme. My name is Sheila Ngatia. I'm the Deputy Representative, and I bring you warm greetings, PS, the representative of the PS, I bring you warm greetings from the UNDP resident representative, Madame Elsie Atafua. She is not with us today because she is in Ghana. She's part of a delegation from Uganda attending the African Youth Connect conference. There's also a very strong representation from the government of Uganda and other stakeholders in that. I'm sure some of you have been following that online, but she brings her greetings. You know, she is very passionate about climate action, and she has really been, working very closely with really all of the partners here. So please receive her greetings. The representative of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Water and Environment, the honorable members of Parliament who are with us here and who are also joining us online, representatives from the British High Commission, from GIZ, from UNFCCC, from the Food and Agriculture Organization, all the representatives from government, private sector, civil society, and including online. We have quite a large number following us online. Good morning. So on behalf of the United Nations program, I am honored to convey our appreciation to the government of Uganda through the Ministry of Water and Environment for organizing today's National Climate Change Forum in preparation for the 26th Conference of Parties, the COP26, under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. And it's wonderful to see this great level of participation today. I mean, the room is full, and really a wide spectrum from state, from non-state, civil society, a lot of young people here. This is really wonderful. Can we clap for ourselves for this? Great. Thank you to the ministry for organizing this. This Climate Change Forum is really a very strategic national engagement in building consensus on the national position paper that will be presented during COP26. And we're really looking forward to this presentation that will come after. This is eagerly awaited. And actually, when you think about it, it is just 1 week. It is 1 week to COP26. And the global attention is already on this. You can see in really all the major international media outlets, on social media, there's a big buzz. The world is looking forward to COP26. And, for us here in Uganda, we are also looking forward to really having a very strong delegation that will go there to raise the voices from Uganda, to raise the voices from Africa. So today's engagement will enable us to gain a deeper understanding of Uganda's position in the key areas, and some areas which are sticking issues of global negotiations, including, many of which have been raised before: capacity building, access to adequate and predictable finance, the issues of technology and technology transfer, issues around loss and damage, adaptation has been emphasized, adaptation to climate impacts, which is a priority for Africa. A very critical issue around how to integrate gender into climate change responses, how to bring the voices of youth, how to engage youth in climate action so as to ensure equity. So this is really a great workshop, a unique opportunity to discuss Uganda's national position paper and to provide the final inputs to strengthen and ensure that Uganda's negotiators are well equipped with the key elements to uphold and safeguard the national interests at COP26. I think it has been said over and over again that COP26 is really considered as a last chance, a last best chance for the world to take decisive action in reversing the course and the trajectory of temperature increase. Otherwise, we have been told by the scientists that we will enter an irreversible state that really spells a lot of catastrophic consequences for humanity. So this platform today, this workshop with all the various stakeholders who are represented here, is a chance for us to consolidate Uganda's position and to embody the collective expectations of addressing climate impacts in achieving the national development priorities as articulated in the National Development Plan 3, NDP 3, and Uganda's Vision 2040. And with a strong position, we should aim for the negotiations at COP26, providing the required means of implementation for the priorities we have set to achieve in the revised NDC. We spoke at length about this in yesterday's meeting. This can be achieved through effective capacity building, increased access to climate finance, and technology transfer. Now, Uganda has been actively engaged in the global climate change negotiations, and the country's contribution in the past has been remarkable in consolidating the regional position under the Africa Group of Negotiators and in building alliances with other regions. And again, as I said before, we look forward to Uganda having a strong presence and voice in COP26 as one of the Africa's delegations. Turning to COVID-19, because this has also been spoken at length by speakers also before me, that the outbreak of COVID-19 also greatly affected the national ability to respond to a number of challenges, and including adverse impacts of climate change that the country has been facing. Challenges such as floods and landslides, which are causing increasing loss and damage. And our representative from the civil society organization also spoke at length about this. According to the recently released 6th IPCC assessment report, the frequency and intensity of these extreme events will increase. And therefore, it is important that Uganda, like other countries, deepens the planning and investing in green recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. This will be a medium to long-term agenda. So COP26 represents a strategic opportunity for Uganda to keep the momentum for the implementation of the NDC in enhancing the country's green recovery. Climate change, as you all know, is of global concern. That has been, said repeatedly, and we all appreciate that. And it represents an existential threat of our time that really generates inequity, and especially on a younger generation and highly vulnerable communities. It is therefore important to ensure a participatory approach and the full engagement of youth, of women, of non-state actors, including the private sector, and this was also emphasized by the PS, the role of the private sector, as well as civil society in climate action. Climate change is global. It is indiscriminate in its impact. However, the reality is that the impacts are more severe in developing countries, countries like Uganda, and many countries in Africa that lack the capacity to respond adequately to the enormity of the impacts. And unfortunately, the paradox is that these are the countries that have contributed the least to the global emissions that are responsible for this warming of the planet. This is something I think almost everybody in this room is very well aware of, that Africa is one of the most vulnerable regions to climate impacts, and yet is responsible for less than 5% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions. So these are the issues that we are confronted with, and that will be addressed in detail also at COP. So COP26 must deliver a comprehensive and balanced operation guidance on all the provisions of the Paris Agreement to ensure its effective and full implementation. The operationalization of the Global Goal on Adaptation, GGA, established under the Paris Agreement for enhancing adaptive capacity, strengthening resilience, and reducing vulnerability to climate change in the context of the temperature goal of the agreement is critical for Uganda and Africa. It is crucial for the COP26 negotiations to recognize and take into consideration the special circumstances of Africa under the Convention. And the reasons for these special circumstances include limited capacity for planning and implementation of development plans, the high levels of indebtedness, economic and social impacts for implementation of climate actions at national, regional, and global levels, and the economic impacts of climate change on Africa's natural resources. Also importantly, the limited ability to deal with and to adapt to climate-related or climate-induced impacts. As I move to conclude, I want to turn to the national determined contributions. And Uganda, like many other countries, is now finalizing its enhanced NDC for 2021 to 2025. As UNDP, we are pleased to note that in the revised NDC, Uganda has increased its ambition to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from 22% by 2030 to 24.2% in the revised NDC. However, the realization of this ambition depends upon the availability of the means of implementation. Briefly on UNDP and our work here in Uganda, under our country program document for the next 5 years to 2025, climate action remains a highly prominent and critical area of support to the government and the people of Uganda. And UNDP is pleased to have been working closely with the government and other stakeholders throughout the process of developing the NDC implementation plan and providing support towards a decade of restoration, among other frameworks, that will help to realize the climate change targets that have been set out to be achieved for the country. On COP26, I am also pleased to confirm that we are directly supporting the participation of key negotiators from Uganda and also supporting youth participants to be in Glasgow. And this is critical to ensure that there is a good representation by Uganda at this global stage. And I know other UN agencies, including FAO, are also equally supporting the participation of several Ugandan experts and young people. UNDP will continue to engage with the different ministries, private sector, various groups, including the youth, CSOs, and communities, to work towards the achievement of the SDGs and to address climate change as a key imperative under our country program. In conclusion, I want to thank the leadership of the Ministry of Water and Environment for their commitment to ensure the active engagement of all stakeholders in the formulation of Uganda's position for COP26. Let me sincerely thank all our development partners, including those who are represented here from Britain, from Germany, the European Union, and others, for the continued support and engagement, and also those who have continued to provide financial resources for our programs. Distinguished guests, we look forward to a very vibrant and interactive engagement today at this National Climate Change Forum on COP26, as this is a critical process to ensure successful outcomes at COP26 for Uganda that will support the realization of NDP 3 and of the Sustainable Development Agenda in Uganda. On behalf of UNDP, I thank you.
Thank you so much, UNDP, and thank you so much to those that are following these conversations on TV and on Twitter. The conversation, the hashtag still runs as COP26 and climate action. That is on Twitter and in the other platforms. Now, let's say that from the development partners and our key stakeholders in this conversation, allow me to welcome Honorable Christine Kaya, the Parliamentary Forum on Climate Change.
negotiators who participate in this negotiation, alongside the other negotiation blocks for the least developed country, African group of negotiators, which is you are one of them, and the G7 and China, to which Uganda is a member, to champion the African voice as a build-up to the many issues around global emission cuts, green climate fund, work program along long-term financing, climate technology center networks, among others. In this conference of parties, 194 countries are being asked for their plans to cut emissions by 2030. They all agreed in 2015 in Paris that to make changes to keep the global warming well below 2 degrees centigrade, above the pre-industrial levels, and also try to aim to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade so that we avoid a climate catastrophes. Climate catastrophes are already happening in Uganda, and you are a witness to them, and I think in many other least developed countries. Ladies and gentlemen, in this Paris Agreement, countries have to keep making bigger emissions cuts until reaching net zero in 2050. As part of the preparation for the forthcoming conference in Glasgow, Uganda already submitted its interim revised national determined contribution as part of the commitment in the agreement, which was validated yesterday with amendments. And I highly hope that many of you participated in the revision yesterday. Ladies and gentlemen, the National Climate Change Forum validates the country positions, which later builds onto the process of coming up with our national position paper that is later used by all Uganda delegates while at COP26 negotiations. With support from Food and Agricultural Organization Uganda to the government of Uganda through the Climate Change Department, a country's draft position for COP26 has been formulated, which later, at this meeting, we shall endorse and be adopted by all the delegates to the COP26. So, your presence here is to review and validate our positions when we go to Glasgow, starting from tomorrow. National consultations have been undertaken to review and assess the implementation status of previous COP positions, identifying national climate change priorities in the different climate change frameworks and strategies, including enhanced national determined contribution and the long-term low-emission development strategies. The consultations have also devised measures for realization of the national determined contribution and align the country's priorities to the UNDP 3, the East African Community Roadmap for the implementation of Paris Agreement. The key negotiation thematic areas included in Uganda COP26 position paper include: 1, mitigations. Among you here, including myself, I'm in the group of mitigations. So you have to go and deliberate and elaborate, emphasize on Ugandan's positions on mitigation measures for addressing climate change. Secondly, adaptations. Third, financing climate change activities. Fourth, technology development and transfer. Fifth, capacity building. Sixth, gender and climate change, that the lead negotiators are going to present to us today, including progress on the implementation of the resolution of the Paris Agreement and other previous COP decisions. However, in addition to the key negotiation elements, further issues that Uganda plans to advance for discussion at COP26 include the implementation of the country's NDC and the long-term low-carbon development strategies, increased access to climate finance, technology transfer and capacity building, and effective stakeholders' engagement in the implementation of the climate action. Thus, such level of anticipation requires thorough preparation to make an impactful contribution to the negotiations in COP26. I once again want to thank all development partners and members of the non-state actors, the media, for the continued support in the implementation of COP decisions and resource mobilization for policy implementation in regards to the climate change phenomena. Last but not least, let me take this opportunity to thank you for finding time to be a part of this important event. By this conversation is now open officially, and you can now interact at leisure. I've talked this for God and my country. Signed, Minister of State for Environment, Honorable Beatrice Atim Anua. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause again for Director Collins, lawyer. And let me request that, Director, before you go, we could have a group photo for all of us who have had a presentation. Let me